Welcome back. This one has been a hectic one. I just kept picking new starting dates and the research has been very interesting. Now, let's do this. What do you mean Iran with my trusty texters? Alright, Iran is that patch of land in the Middle East with the Gulf of Oman below it and the Caspian Sea above it. So its neighbors across the Gulf are like Oman, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and its neighbors that it shares a border with are Iraq, Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan. I mean, you cross the Caspian Sea, it's Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, and then back to the coastline is Pakistan. And you can see why it's a pretty good piece of real estate. You got protection with the mountains, access to the sea, and that's probably why you would stick up a good fight for thousands of years. Alright, 1906. First revolution. Some would make you think it's 79. I'm gonna go with 06 because that's when Iran got their constitution. Another important event in 1908, oil. And like it was then and it is now, a powerful force and a big reason behind a lot of not just this stuff, but a lot of stuff in the world. 1909, the British move on in and set up the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, later the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, then later British Petroleum, aka BP. 1914, the British government pretty much has complete control over the oil because you're gonna need as much oil as you can get to fight the First World War. And Ahmed Shah, the king of the country at the time, had no problems selling off everything to Russian and British imperial forces, leaving the people the Qajar government was meant to rule over with pretty much nothing. So when you do stuff like that, I can imagine when they get you with a coup, not too many of your people are upset. So over 1921 to 1926, Reza Khan Pahlavi ends up becoming Reza Shah, and his son is named Crown Prince. Yep, there's a new Shah in town. And then 9 years later, Iran becomes Iran, and the world recognizes the new name, which is just the name of their country and their language, I'm pretty sure. Alright, we'll go ahead another 6 years to 1941, and we've made it to another world war. Look at that, how time flies. And hear me out, if they had smartphones back then and had messenger and stuff, this is how I reckon it could have gone down. Yeah, so the British and the Russians haven't left Iran alone, so they're feeling a bit smothered, you know? So I thought they would try and make some German friends, and in the context of World War II, that's not exactly what you want to do. So Reza Shah got forced out and replaced with his son Mohammad Reza Shah, because Soviet and British forces didn't really like that Reza Shah didn't get rid of every German out of Iran when they were told to. Remember, this was World War II. Forward a couple more years to 1949, and there was an assassination attempt on the Shah, so using that opportunity to make some changes to the constitution to ultimately give the monarchy more power. And then just 2 short years later, Iran gets a new prime minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, who got to power by promising they're going to take back their oil. So that pissed off the Shah, the Brits, and now cue the US.
It's actually been an open secret for decades, but for the first time now, the CIA has released documents that show its role in the 1953 coup. That is the coup that toppled Iran's democratically elected prime minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, had moved to nationalize oil production in Iran. Well, the U.S. was concerned at the time that that would mean a victory for the Soviets in the Cold War. So shortly after his election, the CIA began to plan his overthrow, teaming up with Britain's MI6.
Now, the CIA, we've seen it spelling out its involvement in a series of newly declassified documents. These are the actual documents marked confidential, top secret, eyes only. It's the stuff of crime and mystery and spy novels. This one talks about the security implications of CIA letters of commendation for those who served in that operation codenamed TP Ajax. And this one, dated July 22nd, 1953, almost a month before the coup, it talks about preparing an official American statement to follow a successful coup.
See, lots of things happened and I just picked what I thought were important events. So 1957, US and Israeli intelligence officers worked with Iran to set up the Savak, the secret police, and they played a big role in helping the Shah keep his dictatorial rule. So a lot of torture and execution of anyone that went against the Shah and the regime. 1963, Shah implements the White Revolution, social, economic, and land reforms. And in my research, I saw these two words used depending on what the source of information was, but westernization and modernization. Alright, so with universities turning out more graduates than there were jobs and farmers having to go into cities because of land reforms, there were not enough jobs, people were frustrated, doing it rough, and mosques were one of the only places where you're safe from the Shah. That's why you hear of planning of the revolution happening there. And with the situation reaching boiling point, the Iranian people took to the streets, were met with force, and then would just return in greater numbers. They would face more violence and then just come out in stronger numbers. They would hold mass demonstrations and would be met with martial law. And this went on to 1979. January, the Shah is forced into exile, him and his family. February, Ayatollah Khomeini returns after 14 years of exile in Iraq and France. April, the Islamic Republic of Iran is born. And then in November, Iranian students storm the US embassy. And I wrote 52 hostages because that's how many I believe were kept for 444 days. I believe there were more hostages, but some were released sooner. And the Iranian people were pissed because the Shah went to the States for cancer treatment. It was just not a good look for him to go to the States. Under him be returned to be trialed for crimes. And we have made it to the 80s. You know what that means? It is the most part of this decade goes to the Iraq-Iran war. Alright, the Euphrates and Tigris River meet up and become one just before the Gulf, and that river is the border between Iraq and Iran. And Saddam Hussein's game plan was he was going to take the East Bank. So Saddam Hussein's Iraq had a military that was being supplied by China, Russia, France, the US, everybody. And Iran, not so much. So when Iraq invaded Iran on the 22nd of September 1980, so with Iran going up against a heavily armed Iraq under the Ayatollah's leadership, and I believe catching Saddam off guard, Iran pulled huge numbers. This is also because people as young as 14 were going in to fight. So you have the Ayatollah with the Iranian army stacked full of people wanting to fight for their country, and not many people backing them in the whole arms deals thing, versus dictator Saddam Hussein and the Iraqi army, and being backed by everyone and their dog. Iran does get some weapons through the whole Iran-Contra scandal. Oh, do you have a minute? Should I go through that while you're here? Might as well. It's all relevant. Alright, it's the 80s and the US has President Reagan. And it's like someone sat this guy down and said, alright, here's some big no-nos. No weapons to Iran. Do not fund the Contras. And drugs are bad, okay? And Reagan must have been like, challenge accepted. Cue Oliver North. Alright, we'll go down to Nicaragua and explain what's going on there first. Now, the Sandinistas have formed a government and they are opposed by the Contras, which are murdering and raping and being funded by various other countries. And Reagan wants in on the funding the Contras action because that's the right option, as in the Sandinistas are the left. Yep. And you'd think funding the side doing heaps of raping would just make you reconsider Not with Reagan. So good thing for the Boland Amendment. Alright, and then we duck back over here to the other side of the world. Back to that war I was in the middle of telling you all about. So this is what Oliver North got up to in his time in the National Security Council. So they can't sell weapons directly to Iran. They're already selling weapons to Iraq. And Iran's very anti-American. So you sell the weapons to Israel to sell them to Iran. Yeah. Not done yet. And then with the profit from that, now you can fund your Contras. Oh, and Reagan's also cheering because Hezbollah releases American hostages and well, everything blew up in their faces in November 86. And the people involved got indicted and convicted of the crimes and lying to Congress. But then George H. Bush becomes president from being vice president and pardons everyone. Yep. And back to Iran, where Saddam has attacked villages with chemical weapons, killing many civilians, and the war pretty much comes to an end with a stalemate and is mainly just a huge loss of life and damage to their oil industries. And then July in 88 is when an American Navy ship shot down an Iranian civilian plane, claiming they thought it was a fighter jet. It killed all 290 people on board and the crew, with 60 of them being children. Alright, 1989. June. Khomeini dies and is succeeded by Ali Ahami. And in August, Ali Akbar Ashami Rafsanjani becomes president. Oh, forgive me for my pronunciation. 1993, Rafsanjani wins re-election. 1995, the US puts sanctions on Iran on oil and trade. 1997, Mohammad Khatami wins the presidential election with a landslide. And yes, let's take a moment to appreciate my little year counter I made out of paper in the corner. It worked quite well, didn't it? Alright, 2001, he wins re-election. In 2002, Bush included Iran in his Axis of Evil speech. And 2003, the International Atomic Energy Agency says Iran is carrying out plutonium production, but there isn't any evidence of weapon development. 2005, Ahmadinejad wins the presidential election. 2007, the US sanctions them. 2008, the EU sanctions them. 2009, Ahmadinejad wins re-election. 2013, Hassan Rouhani wins the presidential election. And 2015, cue the Iran nuclear deal, or its formal name, the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, from ye old Obama days. And because Trump just has to undo everything Obama did, he comes through in 2018 and rips it up. And they finish off 2018 with some sanctions, and more sanctions. Alright, we've finally made it to 2019. April. So this is less than a year ago from this recording. Trump declares the Islamic Revolutionary Guard a terrorist organization. The first time Washington's labeled another country's military a terrorist group. May, John Bolton sends an aircraft carrier strike group to the Middle East. More sanctions. Everyone's going after everyone's oil tankers. A Saudi pipeline was hit and a rocket landed near the US embassy in Baghdad, and Trump tweeted all about it. In June, the Japanese Prime Minister came to try and help with peace talks, but got a whole lot of, why am I going to talk to Trump? Are you serious? And while the Japanese Prime Minister was in Iran, a Japanese oil tanker was hit. I think so was a Norwegian one. The Pentagon authorized another 1,000 more troops. A US drone was shot down, but there's arguments over what airspace it was in. Uranium's being enriched. More sanctions, and Bolton sends some Lockheed Martin F-22 Raptor, which is single-seat, twin-engine, all-weather stealth tactical fighter aircrafts. July, more uranium enrichment. British Royal Marines stop a tanker, and then Iran stops a tanker. So the UK sends warships to escort any British-flagged vessel going through the Gulf. August, Rouhani has a unveiling ceremony for a surface-to-air system, the newest part of Iran's missile defense network. More uranium's being enriched. And September, when John Bolton was fired. A Saudi oil facility was hit by a drone. The Houthi rebels from Yemen took responsibility, but Pompeo still blamed Iran. November 2019. There's still the uranium tankers and tweets going on, but now there is unrest and mass demonstrations because fuel prices went up as much as 300%, and 8 people with links to the CIA were arrested by Iranian security agents. December, US warships find advanced missile components on a stateless vessel, saying that the initial investigation indicated that the origins were Iranian, and they have a prisoner swap on the 7th of December. They exchange a Chinese-born US citizen that was held in Iran since 2016 for an Iranian scientist detained in the US, and the swap was facilitated by the Swiss government. Rocket attacks on Iraqi military bases, US and Iraqi personnel wounded. A US contractor was killed. Okay, and for that one dead American contractor, 2 days later, the US launches strikes on 2 sites, one in Iraq, one in Syria, that belong to Hezbollah, and Washington says they were in retaliation for the killing of the US contractor. Iraqi security sources say that at least 25 fighters were killed and 55 others were wounded. Oh yeah, it also says that the US embassy in Iraq was broken into by pro-Iranian paramilitary groups. But before I move on to the start of 2020, I want to finish 2019 with a quote from an Iranian government spokesperson in regards to the US strikes on the site in Iraq and Syria. Iran strongly condemns those attacks. And this is a quote: "America has shown its firm support for terrorism and its neglect for the independence and sovereignty of countries, and it must accept consequences for its illegal act." Alright, we've made it. 2020, January, the month we are currently in while I'm recording this. The 3rd, US assassinates top Irani general Soleimani. So to retaliate, Iran hits some bases after fair warning has been given so they can be empty. But amongst all the pressure and paranoia that would come with setting off missiles, Iran shoots down a Ukraine flight leaving Tehran, killing all 176 people on board. And the 16th, like when I was writing that, Iran said that they've enriched more uranium now than before the nuclear deal ever became a thing. So, yep, that's worked out well for Iran, I guess. And the Ayatollah led the Friday prayer, which is kind of a big deal because the last time he did that was 2012. So yeah, we'll quickly go to the people of Iran and then I'll wrap this all up.
شهدا سینه زن حسین فاطمه بودن ازاس امروز ازاس مرد بر آمریکا شهدتر انتقام الله هممız رو به قبله دعای سلامتی آقا امام زمان خوبی که در خدا
ये एक बुज़दिलाना इक़दाम था और दुनिया ने देख लिया कि अमेरिका एक दहशतगर्द स्टेट है।
ساچمه نیست تیره بابا ساچمه تیره بریم تو کوچه. كلكم وما نريد لا ايران ولا نريد امريكا ولا نريد الاحزاب كلها ولا نريدك ترجع لان انت ما في خير كلهم ما فيهم خير عمي.
Whoa, 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 I'm not done yet. The way I see it, when you look at the history, these people, the Iranian people, have been putting up a good fight and willing to throw down for their home for so long, longer than Islam's even been around. And I thought the history would help show that Iran have always had a thing with leaders, as you would expect from a place that had a monarchy and a religious leader and then became a republic. I guess you didn't even need to go back in time for that, because I reckon how the people mourned a person with authority and within days were going after the people in authority because of the shooting down of the plane. The Iranian people, forced to be reckoned with, appreciate lots of things about their culture. And of course, the further back I went, the more I could show the huge role that things like resources play. Like how much of all of this we can pretty much bring down to oil. Which leads me to the last thing I'll show you, the thing I'll leave this video with. It's quite disturbing if you ask me. But from oil to the military-industrial complex. Thank you for watching. Oh, that's another thing I really appreciate about the Iranian culture. They have so many ways to say thank you. Like, subscribe, heli mannun.
It was American defense products that did this, and the market's response is to buy those defense stocks. And I see Northrop, Lockheed, and Raytheon doing very well indeed, thanks. Well, if you make missiles and guns and stuff like that, you can do well today. That's fact. Lockheed's up $10, that's 2.7%, and Northrop Grumman up a full 4%. Right. Who makes the missiles? I can't remember. Is
Lockheed?
Lockheed and Northrop, maybe?
Yeah.
Raytheon, Lockheed, Northrop Grumman. Those are the defense stocks which really count in this situation. Nice gains. Do show me, please, the defense stocks, because I'll bet they are moving big time today. I think they are. Show them to me, please. Lockheed is up 3%. Can you show me Northrop Grumman? And I want to see Raytheon as well, please, because I think we've got big gains there.